Balake, where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV this fine Saturday afternoon. Remember, guys, at SPTV, every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Some people still ask in the comment section, what does SP stand for in SPTV? It stands for suppressive person, which is what Scientology calls anyone who leaves Scientology and speaks out publicly against the abusive policies and practices. So that's what SPTV is. Guys, we're talking about Danny Masterson. The news came out that his wife Bijou has asked for divorce, and that she's requested full custody, which you would expect. The guy's going to prison for 30 years, and he has granted the request to relinquish full custody. This is a little more newsworthy than it might seem like at first glance. You're like, of course that is the way this is going to go. Why is this a big deal? Part of the reason it's a big deal is because of the information that came out yesterday that Scientologists in Los Angeles are being called in for private briefings. If you ask me, it's probably specific Scientologists who are making a stink over why Scientology has not yet publicly distanced itself from Danny Masterson. Scientologists are being called in for public briefings and told that Danny Masterson has been declared a suppressive person. There is no truth to the rumor that Danny Masterson will be joining SPTV. That is totally false. And so, look, let's just jump into this article. I'm just going to point out a few things here. So this is from, it's a thing called The Blast, which I've never heard before, but it had less ads than TMZ. So we're going with The Blast. Danny Masterson giving up custody of 9-year-old daughter in divorce. Danny Masterson has responded to the divorce filed by his wife, Bijou Phillips, and agrees that she should have full custody of their 9-year-old daughter. According to legal documents obtained by The Blast, Masterson admits there is a chance he will be in prison for the next 30 years. So Phillips should, I assume it's supposed to say should have, Phillips should have all rights to their daughter. Danny lists their date of separation as September 15th, just 1 week after he was sentenced to life in prison. I have to make a commentary on that. When it first broke that Bijou was filing for divorce, it wasn't a shock that she would file for divorce. It was a bit of a shock that she would do it so quickly. There was a theory that I ascribed to and did a video about, that this was a move to protect Danny's assets, aka Bijou's assets, from the 2 or 3 civil lawsuits, I lose track, 2 or 3 civil lawsuits that Danny Masterson is facing right now. Also, Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2, maybe Jane Doe 3, but I'm not sure, definitely Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2, have like a 12-month window from the date that Danny was convicted, to the best of my understanding, to file a civil lawsuit against Danny for the attacks themselves. You understand that the lawsuits that Danny Masterson is facing right now are not for the attacks against the women that he was convicted of. It's for separate issues. It's for harassment. Is there only one lawsuit against Danny right now? It might only be one civil lawsuit that Danny is facing right now. But that lawsuit was filed 2 or 3 years ago. Again, I lose track of the dates sometimes. But because Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 have this 12-month clock that's ticking to be able to sue Danny for the actual attacks themselves, now that he's been found now that he's been criminally convicted, there was this theory that, okay, this divorce is going to be fast tracked so that Danny's assets can be transferred to Bijou, and Bijou, this divorce can be on the books before Jane Doe 1 and 2 have an opportunity to file suit against Danny. That way all these assets will be protected. That was one theory. There was also a theory, an additional theory on that Danny and Bijou were going to magically come up with some legal separation agreement that had been dated like 3 or 4 years prior. I'm told this is a strategy that celebrities will use, that if some controversy, some scandal emerges, they will like instantly get some legal paperwork done that says they're legally separated. They'll just tuck it away in a safe, never to be seen or heard from again, but they'll drag it out in the future if necessary. So I thought, okay, maybe Danny and Bijou are going to try to actually protect the assets, even from the lawsuit that was filed 2 or 3 years ago. When it says right here that Danny listed their date of separation as September 15th, that totally pulls the rug out from under Bijou in any attempt to protect their assets, marital assets, combined assets, whatever the right way to think about it is, from the lawsuit that has been pending now for 2 or 3 years. It could still protect assets from a future lawsuit from Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2, theoretically, but it does not. The assets will not be protected from the lawsuit that is currently pending. So I thought that was very interesting. And I'll probably have another conversation about this with my lawyer friend, Zach, to really make sure I've got my facts right on that. Now, look at this, guys. He is asking for visitation with his daughter, but that will be in the confines of a California state prison. This is very important. This is very important. Guys, what is it that we believe is the reason Tom Cruise disconnected from his only biological daughter, Suri Cruise? We generally believe, it has generally been reported, that the reason Tom Cruise has disconnected from Suri is because she is connected to Katie Holmes, who Scientologists consider to be a suppressive person for having somewhat publicly departed Scientology and for having divorced Tom Cruise and making him look like a little punk ass bitch who cannot hold on to a woman. I mean, all 3 of Tom Cruise's wives were Scientologists who have been declared suppressive persons. It doesn't exactly make His Holiness, little Tommy Cruise, look very good. Now, this is interesting because I have always said that Tom Cruise, based on the rules of Scientology, did not have to disconnect from Suri. He did it out of principle. He did it to set a good example. He did it to show Miscavige what a good, dedicated little Scientologist he is. Little Tommy Cruise really likes to impress little Captain Davy Miscavige of the fake Space Navy. By the way, this is little Captain Davy of the fake Space Navy. I speak from a little bit of personal experience. When I was a young little Scientologist, my younger brother, Darius DiMartino, who's 6 years younger than me, his father, not the same father as my father, his father and my mom were married. That's how Darius came to be. But at some point, I think they separated when Darius was 2. And then at some point, Frank got himself into trouble and got himself declared a suppressive person. Frank continued to see my little brother Darius, pick him up for the weekends and all that kind of stuff, regular visitation that he was permitted to based on whatever agreements there were in, whatever divorce agreement and custody agreement was in place. Frank was allowed to continue to see and visit and have partial custody of my little brother, even though we were all Scientologists. Now, this is one of these things where you're probably going to get different stories from different Scientologists about what their own personal experiences have been on this particular subject, because the rules in Scientology are enforced so differently by different people in different regions at different times. You know, for Scientology would like everyone to believe there's one standard technology and standard admin and standard policy, and it's applied, you know, the same everywhere. It's not. It's not. Rules are different for different people. Even if rules aren't different for different people, policies are applied differently by different people. Anyway, it gets a little messy. So my point is this. We learned yesterday that Scientologists are being told Danny Masterson has been declared a suppressive person. We don't know if that's a real declare. We don't know if it's a fake declare. We don't know if it's a secret declare. On some level, it doesn't really matter. Let me tell you another little anecdote. Back in 2006, when I left the Sea Organization, me and my wife were having a baby. We said we're keeping the baby. We had to leave the Sea Organization. This was right around the time that Jenna Miscavige was starting to publicly speak out against Scientology. Now, Jenna Miscavige is someone that I knew from my time in the Sea Org, and we had a mutual friend named Daniel Presta, who worked at the Office of Special Affairs International. Daniel had been one of my best friends for a long time. He was the best man at my wedding. Jenna Miscavige and her husband were even at my wedding as well in the Sea Org. I get a phone call from Daniel, because at this time, I think me and Jenna were probably friends on Facebook. Daniel says, "Hey, I see your friends on Facebook with Jenna. Jenna's gone over to the dark side and she started to attack the church publicly. So she hasn't been declared a suppressive person, but you know the policy and the even though she hasn't been declared, the policy still applies. And I go, which policy would that be? There's no policy that says you can just verbally declare somebody a suppressive person. I go, so you're saying she hasn't been declared, but he was telling me I had to unfriend her on Facebook because I couldn't be connected to an SP. And I go, what policy would that be? He was the policy on high crime, suppressive acts, suppression of Scientologists. She's guilty of suppressive acts, and therefore, the policy applies. I go, what policy? I said, so you're saying that because she's committed a suppressive act, she's a suppressive person? He's like, yes, exactly. I go, Scientologists commit suppressive acts all the time. It doesn't get you automatically declared a suppressive person. That's not what the policy says. And he goes, well, we went back and forth on this. He's like, well, she's not officially declared yet. I go, well, why wouldn't you just call me back when she is officially declared? Like, I don't even understand. I said, what you're doing is technically off policy, because policy says if it isn't written, it isn't true. But you're sitting here telling me there's nothing in writing saying that Jenna has been declared, but you want me to treat her as if she is declared. It sounds like you're the one who's not following policy. Okay. That's just an anecdote as far as how, when it comes to enforcing Scientology's policies on who should be declared, who shouldn't be declared, and whether it really matters. See, that's where we're going with this little anecdote. Whether Danny is officially in writing declared an SP, or whether people are just being told verbally to treat him like an SP, it's all the same in the world of Scientology. Now, let's take a look at this. This is also why we were talking about Tom Cruise and him disconnecting from Suri, because Suri's in the custody of Katie, and Katie is considered an SP, even though she's never been declared an SP in writing. Let's go back to this sentence here, guys. He is asking for visitation with his daughter, but that will be in the confines of a California state prison. If Danny Masterson has been declared a suppressive person and Bijou has divorced him, and Danny Masterson, the felon SP, has requested visitation with his daughter, and if Bijou allows that visitation, holy cow! Oh my God, what kind of a precedent would that set for the fact that Tom Cruise has disconnected from his only biological daughter? I feel bad when I say that. It's not that Suri being a biological daughter makes her more important or more of a daughter than his adopted kids. I feel a little bad when I say that. I just feel like, I feel bad when I say it, but I feel like somehow it's relevant. I'm contradicting myself, but I just want to acknowledge that her being his biological daughter doesn't make her more of a daughter than Connor and than Isabella or Connor as a son. But if we can, then we will then be able to compare that Danny Masterson, the declared SP felon serial rapist, wasn't made to disconnect from his daughter. Bijou wasn't made to have her daughter disconnect from this guy, but Tom Cruise disconnected from Suri, who's done nothing. Oh my God, you guys, what a can of worms this would open up. Now, also, again, I just want to go back to the sentence one more time. He is asking for visitation with his daughter, but that will be in the confines of a California state prison. Whether Bijou is allowed by Scientology to permit their daughter to visit Danny in prison will be a very important data point as far as, is Danny Masterson's declare a real declare, or is it just something that some Scientologists are being told to keep the peace and establish some sort of PR? You have to understand, these days, David Miscavige is so hard up for money and donations that Scientology's big donors carry a lot more weight in the world of Scientology today than public have ever carried in Scientology previously. By the way, guys, if you're one of the 2,500 people watching live, do me a favor real quick and hit that like button. It actually does help. Okay, so these big whales these days, Miscavige sometimes it's hard to predict whether he is going to behave in a way that makes sense or whether he's going to behave in the complete opposite way to what one would consider makes sense. But these days, he's somewhat beholden to these whales, kind of like Putin is beholden to the oligarchs, but not totally. You step out of line, your plane's going to blow up in midair. But short of that, Putin does kind of need to keep the oligarchs somewhat happy to an extent. It's a pretty good analogy when you look at David Miscavige and Scientology's wealthiest donors. There was some comments on this yesterday, and I agree that there's a pretty good chance that some pretty wealthy Scientologists are asking some important questions as far as, are their own children, sons or daughters, safe in Scientology, on staff, in the Sea Org? Is Scientology ever going to take a stance against Scientologists who abuse their own members, particularly their youngest members, in some of the most horrible ways? It's very possible Miscavige is having to answer some very tough questions on this subject. And one of the ways Miscavige could deflect these questions is by saying, Danny Masterson's been declared. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. We're taking care. We took care of that problem, and we got rid of the people who failed to declare him over the last 2 years, and we got rid of the people who didn't handle him back in 2003. Miscavige really is an expert in cover your ass tactics. I truly, just as I sit here right now, I'm willing to have my mind changed as soon as I get any more confirmation. I truly don't fully believe that Danny Masterson has been officially declared in writing. I suspect this is just something that certain people are being told to keep the peace. But we'll see. We hope to have more evidence on that very, very soon. Let's see what else this article says. As we reported, Bijou filed for divorce just days after Masterson was sentenced to 30 years behind bars. Okay, in the filing, Bijou Phillips asked for full legal and physical custody of the former couple's 9-year-old daughter. Obviously, with him in prison, she is asking for spousal support not to be paid to him. As the reason for the split, you can imagine officially, she cited irreconcilable differences between them after 12 years of marriage. Also, guys, this article was one of the ones that did not actually have a photo of their daughter. I find it really distasteful when they show photos of people's kids. Okay, representatives for the actress issued a statement following the divorce saying Ms. Phillips has decided to file for divorce from her husband during this unfortunate time. Her priority remains with her daughter. Okay, that's fine. None of the rest of this is particularly relevant to this video. Yeah, that's fine. That's all on this subject for now. Could you imagine if Danny Masterson is the one who ended up making Tom Cruise look bad? Of all the people to shine a bright spotlight on the absolute inhumanity and despicable behavior that Tom Cruise has shown with respect to his daughter, Suri, it could be Danny Masterson who makes Tom Cruise look like the cockroach that he is. Absolutely something amazing to consider. Holy cow, Archer Venturous, what is this? Hi, Aaron. I was watching a live video with Mark, Claire, and Mike earlier, and Mike said that a writ of expulsion was something that Scientology used to do. You said earlier that you had not heard of them, so perhaps it was before your time. I am very glad that you mentioned that. I heard Mike make that statement, and then I actually got an email from someone. I'm not going to screen share it because I haven't redacted it. Wait, that's not my email. Let me find it. I actually got an email from someone who sent me a copy of a writ of expulsion that had been issued on themselves. I've got to find this thing because I want to be able to at least read it to you. Writ of expulsion. I'm looking at it right here. For you under the radar Scientologists, I think this is going to be fascinating. For those of you former Scientologists, under the radar Scientologists, when you look at the gradients, the levels of ethics gradients in Scientology, I've always noticed, and I've never truly understood, that the final two highest ethics gradients are two separate actions. First, it's being declared a suppressive person, and then the ultimate ethics gradient is being expelled from Scientology. And as a little Scientologist growing up, learning all this stuff, I never understood why those were listed as two separate ethics gradients when they were the same gradient. It's not possible to be declared without being expelled, and it's not possible to be expelled without being declared. At least that was my understanding, because somewhere along the line, somebody got rid of these things as two separate actions. Now, so the person who emailed me, I'm looking at this right here. They sent me an image of, it says Sea Organization, Advanced Organization of Los Angeles. This was many decades ago. And it says no longer being in agreement with or willing to support the stated aims of Scientology, applied religious philosophy, as evidenced by a request for a refund of his offerings made to the church, is on this date duly expelled from the Church of Scientology of the Western United States. He may not receive spiritual counseling or training in any Church of Scientology until he has performed an act of contrition and availed himself of recourse to re-enter the church. The first such recourse is to find out who you really are. And it says subject on this document. It says subject, waiver and writ of expulsion. This is absolutely fascinating to me. So as long as now also, I did listen to the interview. It's not quite clear whether a writ of expulsion was actually published on Danny, or if Jeff was just using that phrase because Jeff was aware historically that other people had been expelled using a writ of expulsion. Either way, it's not particularly relevant. Either way, I learned something that I didn't learn from being in Scientology for 34 years, that there used to be something called a writ of expulsion. And that finally explains to me why the final two ethics gradients in Scientology are separate items of being declared a suppressive person, and then the ethics gradient above that is expulsion from Scientology. Mind-blowing to me. So thank you to the individual who sent me their writ of expulsion. And it does beg the question, is it possible that they're bypassing the rules of disconnection with Danny by expelling him without declaring him? The options here are almost unlimited, because the truth is David Miscavige can do whatever the hell he wants to do, and he makes up the rules as he goes along, and he changes the rules all the time. And so on some level, it doesn't really matter. Miscavige is in damage control. That's what matters. Scientology is in damage control. Scientology is crumbling like a house of cards. That's what matters. And yeah, we will see how this develops. Is Scientology going to lose the entire Masterson clan? Is Scientology going to turn away a lot of its members because they're going to be able to see the hypocrisy? If the Masterson clan is given special treatment, if people are being told that Danny's declared, but Bijou's allowed to have their daughter visit him in prison, and the Masterson family is allowed to visit him in prison, that's going to piss off a lot of Scientologists who've had to disconnect from their family members for a hell of a lot less than what Danny has done. It's also going to piss off a lot of members if it turns out Danny's not really declared, and that's just some BS that they're telling people verbally. It sucks to be David Miscavige, you guys. It really sucks to be David Miscavige. Okay, there's let's see, a couple other quick comments here. Gems of SPTV. Daughter news out yesterday, so same day as the Danny SP news. Yep, I meant to do this video yesterday, but I didn't get around to it. Steve Jackson. Big picture. Is it possible Miscavige himself doesn't believe in Scientology as much as he believes in power and money after all of these years? I think that's a pretty fair statement. Depending on how you define these terms, does he believe in Scientology? There's a really interesting spectrum of opinions on this. I've discussed my opinion several times. I will discuss it many more times in the future. But I actually kind of like your statement that he believes in power and money a little more than he actually believes in Scientology these days. That does ring true. Guys, it's 4:12. You know what that means? Starting about 12 minutes ago, a very important protest started outside of the Celebrity Center in Los Angeles. A number of my good friends are there present, live streaming. So as soon as I end this, a few minutes later, I'm going to be doing a live stream highlighting some of the other channels and some of the other live streams of the protest. And that should be really, really cool. Okay, guys, thank you for hanging out with me this afternoon. So much more to come. Thank you as always to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.